Hello everyone, good morning. Hope you all are fine. In last class, you have learned about frictional forces and different types of frictional force. In this module, we are going to learn about fluid friction, advantages and disadvantages of frictional force, methods to increase or decrease frictional forces. Let's start with fluid friction. The substances that can flow are called fluids. For example, gases and liquids. Gases and liquids can flow, so we can call these as fluid. Fluid exert frictional force on objects that move through them. Frictional force exerted by liquids. Liquid exert frictional force on objects which move through them. Which are the objects that move through water? Boat, motorboat, fishes, submarine, etc. move through water. Not only that, humans used to swim in water. In all cases, water exerts frictional force on these objects. Fish is an aquatic organism, that live in water. Water exerts frictional force on this. So in order to move in water, they have to apply force to overcome frictional force. Frictional force reduces the speed of the object. That is, it slows down the moving object. Here, the frictional force is acting in opposite direction of the applied force. That is towards left side. Here the boat is moving towards right, so the direction of frictional force is towards left. Frictional force exerted by air, like water or like liquids. Commonly we can say like liquids, air also exert frictional force. Which are the objects that move through air? You know that car, birds, parachute, aeroplane, helicopter, etc. move through air. Air exerts frictional force on these objects. If a car is moving on a road, there are two types of frictional force is acting on that car. What are they? There is a frictional force between the wheel and the surface of the road. Next one, there is a frictional force exerted by air on that car. The direction of this frictional force is in a direction opposite to the direction of motion of that object. There are some factors that affect fluid friction. First one, speed of the object. Second one, shape of objects. Third one, nature of the fluids. As speed of the object increases, friction also increases. Or we can say that if speed of the object decreases, frictional force is also decreases. Second factor is nature of the nature of the fluid. Let us compare two fluids, liquid and gas. You know that air is very light and thin. Comparing to water, air is very thin, that is, water is thicker than air. Water has some resistance to flow, so it is viscous in nature. But air is thin compared to water, so water has more friction than air. If we compare water and air, water has more friction than air because air is thin but water is thick and are viscous in nature. It is obvious that when objects move through fluids, they have to overcome friction acting on them. In this process, they lose energy. Efforts are therefore made to minimize friction. That effort decreases the efficiency of machines. Sometimes tires wear out due to friction. Tires wear out due to friction. Friction decreases the life expectancy of moving part of vehicles. So, we have to minimize the friction. So, objects are given special shapes to reduce friction. So, our third factor is shape of the object. Where do you think scientists get hint for this special shape? From nature. What is the shape of birds and fishes? It have a special shape that is called streamlined shape. Streamlined shape. Birds and fishes have to move about in fluids all the time. So the bodies must have evolved to shapes which would make them lose less energy in overcoming friction. You know that the shape of an aeroplane, resembles that of a bird. Shape of a boat is also streamlined shape, that is special shape, streamlined shape. Streamlined shape can be reduce the friction. Streamlined shape can be reduce friction and it enhances easy movement. A car with streamlined shape will use less petrol than another cars with same size. That's why all vehicles are designed to have shapes which reduce fluid friction. In this lesson, one of the important term is drag. Okay, drag is the frictional force exerted by fluids. The frictional force exerted by fluid is called drag. Friction, a necessary evil. That is, it has some advantages and some disadvantages also. Let's check the advantages of frictional force. Friction enables us to walk, climb, skip, run, jump, etc. Without friction, we will slip down. It will be impossible even to stand up without friction. That is, we are able to walk because friction prevents us from slip. We are able to write because of the friction between the tip of the pen or pencil and the paper. Light in the matchstick is another important application of friction. When we rub the matchstick against the rough surface of matchbox, the friction between the head of the matchstick and the side of the matchbox produces heat. Friction helps to hold objects. Suppose the outer surface of the glass is oily or greasy. Would it become easier or more difficult to hold it? We cannot hold the glass properly because friction gets reduced due to the smoothness of the grease or oil. You have already learned that friction is maximum in the case of rough surface and is minimum for smooth surfaces. If an object like car started moving, it would never stop if there were no friction. If there were no friction between the tires of the automobiles and the road, they could not be started or stopped or turned to change the direction of motion. We could not fix a nail on the wall or tie a knot without friction. Without friction, no building could be constructed. When we feel cold, we used to rub our palm. Why? When you rub your palms together, there is friction between the surfaces of our palms that keep us warm. So, friction have many advantages. Friction enables us to walk, run, jump and climb. It will be impossible even to stand up without friction. Without friction, you will slip down. It helps to hold objects. It helps to start, stop or change the direction of a vehicle in motion. You could not fix a nail on the wall or tie a knot without friction. Without friction, one could not write even with a pen or a pencil. Without friction, no building could be constructed. Lighting a matchstick is possible due to friction. These are the advantages of frictional force. So we can say that friction is a necessary thing for us. It is very necessary for us. That is, it is our friend. We can say that friction is our friend. Friction has some disadvantages also. Friction wears out the materials like shoes, ball bearing, screw, etc. It worn out steps of foot-over bridges at railway station. Friction produces heat. The jar of a mixer becomes hot when it is run for a few minutes. Friction causes overheat of a car engine. When a machine is operated, heat is generated. That causes much wastage of energy. That is, it reduces the efficiency of machine. Let's summarize the disadvantages of friction. It produces heat. Friction can wear out materials like screw, ball bearing, sole of shoes, etc. It can worn out steps of foot-over bridges at railway station. It always opposes the motion, so in order to overcome this, extra energy is needed to apply. It reduces the life expectancy of moving parts of machines. Next, increasing friction. There are some methods to increase friction. Have you ever thought why the sole of your shoes is grooved? It is done to provide the shoes better grip on the floor. To provide the better grip, that is friction, it is provide a better friction on the floor so that you can move safely. The treaded tires of car, trucks and bulldozers provide better grip with the ground. Sometimes we deliberately increase friction by using brake pads in the brake system of bicycle and automobiles. When you are riding a bicycle, the brake pads do not touch the wheels. But when you press the brake lever, these pads arrest the motion of the rim due to friction. The wheel stops moving. Kabaddi players rub their hands with soil for a better grip of their opponents. Kabaddi players rub their hands with soil to increase friction. Similarly, gymnasts apply some coarse substances on their hands to increase friction for better grip. Next is the methods to reduce frictional forces. First one, by polishing or by using powder. We can smoothen the rough surfaces by polishing or by using powder. Due to smoothness, the friction is reduced from the surfaces. You know that we sprinkle fine powder on the carom board, isn't it? Why? Because to reduce frictional force. Second one, by using ball bearings. Do you know what is ball bearing? It is a hollow circular device containing small metal balls which is fitted around the moving parts of machines. The ball bearing reduces friction by converting sliding friction into rolling friction. Next one is by using rollers and wheels. We can reduce frictional forces by using rollers and wheels. Many heavy objects like suitcase are provided with small wheels called rollers to reduce friction so that they can be carried easily by pulling. Next one is by streamlining. We can reduce frictional force by streamlining. The bodies of car, aeroplane, rockets, etc. are streamlined to reduce the air friction. The bodies of boat and ships are also streamlined to reduce the frictional force. Next is by using lubricants. You might have seen that when a few drops of oil are poured on the hinges of a door, the door moves smoothly because the oil reduces the friction. So we can easily open or close the door. A bicycle and a motor mechanic uses grease between the moving parts of these machines. In all these cases, we want to reduce the friction in order to increase efficiency. Let's see the action of lubricant. When oil, grease or graphite is applied between the moving part of a machine, a thin layer is formed. A thin layer is formed between the surfaces these surfaces do not directly rub against each other. When lubricants are used, a thin layer is formed between the surfaces and moving surfaces do not directly rub against each other. That is, interlocking of irregularities is avoided to great extent. So, movement becomes smooth. So, the movement becomes smooth if we use lubricants between the two surfaces that prevent the interlocking of irregularities. Lubricants. The substances which reduce friction are called lubricants. For example, oil, grease or graphite. So we can use lubricants to reduce frictional force. Can we reduce friction to zero by polishing surfaces or using large amount of lubricants? No. We have already learned that no surface is perfectly smooth. So friction can never be entirely eliminated. Even in smooth surfaces, there is some irregularities. So friction can never be entirely eliminated. Thank you.